One of the worst things you can experience as an NFL quarterback is having a free rusher in your face and having a big time throw to make. But that's just what happened to Brock Purdy in the final drive of the Super Bowl, and basically every quarterback that faced the Chiefs throughout the year. So much so, the Chiefs were second in sacks in the NFL and first in unblocked pressures. The reason for this success isn't because of any individual player, but more so the scheme and philosophy ran by Steve Spagnuolo. So perhaps unsurprisingly, Kyle Shanahan has most recently adopted an age-old philosophy of if you can't beat them, you join them. Or at the very least, you poach a coach, specifically Spag's longtime assistant Dave Merritt, which San Francisco recently brought in for an interview. So today we'll dive into the coach's film to examine the clear solution to San Francisco's defensive woes. The first thing that jumped out about the Chiefs defense ever since 2019 when Spags and Merritt arrived on the scene is how much more complex it is than San Francisco's defense. They essentially are running what Seattle did in 2012, while the Chiefs have one of the more complex defenses across the entire league, and it's paid off. But it's not just the complexity, but how the complexity sets up nice plays later down the road. To start out the game, the Chiefs will often use a cover 2 look to lull a quarterback into a false sense of security before mixing in interesting variations later in the game to really mess with opposing teams' minds. On this play, for example, Spags starts out in a cover 2 look before rotating in to what seems like a blitz and drops off into a cover 1 look. Ultimately, this is a lot for a quarterback to digest, or anyone. And this success on cover 1 leaves Merritt and Spags to do things like this, rotating their safeties into a cover 1 look briefly before rotating them back out into their more traditional cover 2 variation. Much like it does on the offensive side of the ball, this motion allows the defense to get an advantage over a quarterback trying to determine where to go with the ball pre-snap. And much like Kyle Shanahan loves on the offensive side of the ball, Spags' defense is almost positionless. You'll see safeties playing the cornerback position at times, and corners playing safety. You don't really know who's going to drop deep, and that's what makes it so dangerous. In addition to their coverages though, San Francisco will be looking at the Chiefs' defensive line and hoping that Merritt could recreate some of the success. Here, you can see how the Chiefs maintain their run lanes nicely, but more so on the year, they were top 10 in TFL, top 2 in sacks, and number 1 in unblocked pressures. They were absolutely dominant. The way in which they accomplish this is the way in which Spags players play so unselfishly. Here, you can see how each maintains their rush lane, and this allows the backers to flow over and help bring down Christian McCaffrey for a minimal gain. And that's the thing with the Chiefs, it's really tough sledding, and often you'll be stopped for a negative gain, setting you up for a really tough 3rd and long. But who are we kidding? Kyle Shanahan didn't bring in Dave Merritt to stop the run or something else. He brought him in to generate pressures and do things like this in big time moments. Or in the very least, pick his brain to see how he would generate plays like this in the Super Bowl. On the final offensive play for the 49ers of the year, for instance, I don't think Dave Merritt would say, "I got to Brock Purdy because I called a blitz," but rather, "I got to Brock Purdy because I set you up throughout the game to expect something, to only subvert your expectations, to allow my best player, Chris Jones, to go unblocked to Brock Purdy." When you're looking at this play, they chose to attack Spencer Burford, who had limited opportunities to prepare for this game. Here, you can see how they bring up a backer to really try to get him to block down on his man. They also have an edge player and a backer trying to go in the same gap, and while this is often frowned upon, this does allow Chris Jones to get free to Brock Purdy pretty immediately. Excellent call in my opinion. With San Francisco bringing in Dave Merritt for an interview, I think this is a good indication of them possibly learning from their past mistakes. For 2 Super Bowls in a row, Dave Merritt and Spags has had the upper hand on Kyle Shanahan. But perhaps now it's a time for your defensive philosophy to change by bringing in a guy like Dave Merritt from the Chiefs, who might not have to rework your entire defense, but has the ability to bring a nice complexity to your defensive side of the ball. And honestly, when I'm looking at Spags' defense, it looks like Kyle Shanahan's offense, but the defensive version of it. You literally are using players like safeties to motion before the snap to confuse opposing teams' quarterbacks. And in addition to that, Spags runs an almost positionless defense like San Francisco is trying to do on the offensive side of the ball. But ultimately, these are just my thoughts on Dave Merritt and someone that I actually would be extremely excited to see San Francisco bring in. But now, I want to get your opinion of who you want to bring in for the defensive coordinator position, and it would also mean a ton to me if you liked and subscribed. And as always, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.